Cool. So yeah, welcome guys. Got a cozy group so far at the moment, but that is great. So yeah, welcome. Thank you for joining our workshop this evening. Firstly, I would love to know where you're all kind of calling in from. If you want to pop it in the chat. Are you guys UK or Europe? Let us know. And so yeah, we're really excited to be doing this workshop all about building an entrepreneurial mindset today. So for those of you who maybe haven't joined a workshop or don't know who we are, Dublin Island, thank you, Catalin. Cool. We are all about bringing curious and driven people together to take action through entrepreneurship and personal growth. So obviously an entrepreneurial mindset is something that we love to talk about. Vienna, Austria, nice. Thanks, Philippe. So this workshop is going to be led by our very own Kyle here, who is super knowledgeable about venture building and strategic design. So before I hand over, a couple of housekeeping things. If you can put your cameras on, please do, because it's much nicer to talk to human faces rather than little black boxes. Obviously, if you can't, that's totally fine, but it would be great if you can put your camera on. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to pop them in the chat. We're a small group as well, so feel free to just like unmute yourself and shout. That's fine as well. And finally, there will be some exercises for you to do as well. So grab a pen and paper so you can do those as and when we get around to them. And with that said, I think it's time to hand over to you, Kyle.
Hey, so nice to meet you all. So my name is Kyle, as Katie kindly introduced myself as. And I am just going to welcome each of you by name because we're a relatively small group of people. And I just feel like it's good to warm people up. So nice to meet you, Tobias. Hopefully you aren't working too hard. Hopefully your day is finished. Catelyn, nice to meet you. Philippe, wonderful to meet you. Alexa, nice to meet you. And Anita, nice to meet you all. So we're going to be exploring a little bit of what we do here at Uprise Academy. And I'm going to start off with how to build an entrepreneurial mindset. So you're going to need some pen and paper. So I will give you, has everyone got pen and paper? If you don't have pen and paper, obviously you can type on your laptops or wherever might be good for you. So this is a sort of insert of a little bit of what we do on some of our programs. For those of you who don't know what we do and where we've been, is we sort of started off as the Nomad MBA, and we've sort of had alternative MBA programs. We've collaborated with all sorts of interesting organizations and people and built lots of interesting companies as we've gone along this adventure. So part of what we do is teach people about how to escape corporate, and how to use some of the sort of startup frameworks to build companies that help them to work on things that actually create impact both in their lives and the lives of the people that their companies service. I think a very relevant topic these days. So I suppose I'll start off by asking each of you is, do you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur? And the word entrepreneur actually comes from French, as you probably have worked out, and for those of you who may be French speaking, it actually means almost to take action, to take from, to force, so to enter in many ways. So it's a very proactive word. And I'm going to sort of start by asking each of you, if you wouldn't mind just typing into the chat, what do you think makes a remarkable entrepreneur? So what is the thing that sticks out in your mind as to what you think makes a remarkable entrepreneur? Let's go around and see what everyone's saying. Okay. Hi, Toby. Hi, Tobias from Ghent and Frankfurt. Hi, Anita in Amsterdam. So what do you think it is that makes a remarkable entrepreneur? If any of you want to type it in the box. Drive, I like it. It's very true. Focus, correct. Passion, 100%. Vision. Ambition. Setting goals, being able to work out the steps and achieve them. Very good. So I love all of these. I think they're all very true. I think, being an entrepreneur, again, it requires that you have multifaceted aspects to your personality. I think the wonderful thing about that is that what happens if I told you that what you need to be a remarkable entrepreneur ultimately is you. And as corny as that may sound, in many ways, is you have the skills and the toolkit already to be able to be the entrepreneur that you need to be. You just need to unpack those tools and use those in a way that's functional to you. So a lot of the time when we think about what a successful, powerful, driven entrepreneur looks like, it's someone like Jeff Bezos. In my life and my line of work, prior to doing what I do now, is I'd sort of worked alongside billionaires. I'd sort of helped set up a bunch of different companies. I'd helped with venture capital firms, all sorts of interesting stuff. And what you tend to find is that, these hyper entrepreneurial characters that we find as these heroes in the stories that we watch, a lot of the time actually can end up being a little bit more of monopolists and not entrepreneurs. They tend to grow very fast, move fast and break things. We love that phrase in the world of tech. But what does that mean in the world of life? And I think that breaking of things is kind of what has got us to where we are today. So when we think of entrepreneurs, we forget about people like our Uber drivers. So who's used, who's Ubered, hopefully in the last 6 months? Some of you have in some shape or form. Have you ever bought a pack of gum from a little cafe like this? And these are the entrepreneurs who we see that sort of make up majority of our economies. These SMEs make up a lot of what we do in organizations. So let me just read this quote. It's one of my favorites by a guy called Mohammed Yunus, who set up the Grameen Bank and has basically injected the bottom section of the economy in places like Bangladesh, India, and he's sort of the father of what they call microfinance. And he sort of talks about this idea of when we were in caves, we were all self-employed, finding our own food, feeding ourselves. That's where human history began. As civilization came, we suppressed it. We became labor because they stamped that out. You are labor. So we forgot that, in fact, many of us actually have entrepreneurial roots, entrepreneurial history. We are from mercantile environments. Ultimately, we already are entrepreneurs in most of the world. It's only when you start getting to slightly more developed economies where we start getting into being parts of labor forces and the Industrial Revolution, etc. So, first exercise is right now, you probably are exchanging your services for a fee of some sort. And in many ways, like I said, you are already an entrepreneur. You probably just don't realize it. When you work inside a company, you are exchanging your service, your knowledge, your education for a fee, and they are paying you for that fee. So the time when you're sitting inside an organization, right now, for those of you who may actually be working, they are paying you for the fee that the service you're providing. So I want you to write down, what value does your service offer to the organization that you're serving? So if you're an accountant, for example, you're helping people file their accounts. If you are a graphic designer, you are helping to communicate. So what value does your service offer? So I want you to think a little bit about the professional superpower as I think about it. What is your professional superpower? What is the value that your service offers? Okay. And then the second question is, to who do you offer this service? So right now, if you're working in a corporate, you are offering this to your company. Maybe let's say you work in an advertising company. You then are providing a service to that advertising company. The question then is, how big is the market that you're serving? And who are they? Who is the market that ultimately you, as a service provider, as an employee, is serving within your market? And then the third question I want you to sort of answer is, how do you scale and automate what you do? And that potentially becomes a little bit more difficult as you begin to think about, okay, if I were to lose my job today, and hopefully that doesn't happen, or you may be in that situation already, we live in precarious times, but how do you scale and automate what you're doing. So ultimately you are either irreplaceable or your sort of service is scalable. So you can step away from being in a salaried position and you can potentially start creating something. I see some questions in the box. Let me see what people are saying. Cool. So some more questions there. Great. Okay. So those 3 questions, if you want to write down answers to those. Okay. So let's go play. So I'll move on to the next section, which is the only thing more addictive than carbs is a salary. I know we all sort of lean into carbs in these lockdown times. But I think the thing that most of us tend to get addicted to is, we all asked ourselves at some point in our lives, what do I want to do with my life? And then we kind of fell into the salary trap, and it became too easy for us not to step out of it. So that addiction to having a salary gets us spending our creative energy building profits for people like Facebook, or for industries that don't have our best interests at heart. So we end up offering services, providing things to bigger clients who provide services to bigger clients who provide services to bigger clients. And ultimately, is that ever really what we wanted to do? And yet what we tend to find is when you're probably sitting at night, consuming the internet or on your commute as you used to be, you find yourself wanting to crave to actually make an impact in the world. You find yourself saying, but I want to live my best life too. I see these people out there living these incredible lives. Why am I not, living that lifestyle? And ultimately, it comes down to the barrier or the sort of lack of growth mindset around particular facets of your life, where you think, oh, I can't afford to do that, or these self-limiting beliefs which you are placing on your personal narrative. So the question then becomes, what do you truly value? Right? You are spending your finite energy on working in incredible companies and organizations doing interesting stuff, but do you truly value what it is you do on a day-to-day basis? And is that the stuff that you really want to work on? Is that the stuff that makes you feel alive? So what if I told you that your purpose in life was ultimately to become you? Our process of growing and evolving and sort of going up these value chains in companies is starting our own companies, whatever it is, this journey of self-discovery that we all go on, that we all have this sense of resistance and, we're constantly seeking, what is the meaning of life? Well, the meaning of life is to unpack who you are, right? And that's an infinite process. So ultimately the process of life is to define your purpose and to become more of who you are. So how do you go about doing that? Well, it ultimately comes down to stop trying to be the things that you're not, and start trying to be the things that you're good at. So we spend a lot of time sort of upskilling in loads of things to try and be adaptable to what the market requires. We're servicing very complex organizations, but ultimately what we tend to find is that it actually would probably serve us a little bit better if we were focusing on the things that we're really good at, mastering those, and becoming a specialist in that space. So differentiating ourselves from the broader market by actually working on the things that we give a fuck about, the things that light us up inside and make us realize that, this is the reason I come to work in the morning. This is the reason I'm checking my emails. This is the reason I'm building that new concept, that new idea, that I'm launching something. That's the reason to wake up in the morning, not to sort of think of another campaign or whatever it is you might be doing. So ultimately, this idea of figuring out who you are and carving out your own path is something that we focus quite heavily on here at Uprise Academy. Is helping you figure out what is that path you want to create, and then what are the tools and mechanisms you can use within an entrepreneurial framework to get you to that point. So we all love, I know we do at Uprise, hopefully you do as well. We all have impact-driven lifestyle founders, people who are doing stuff that actually, you walk into those little stores, the people who are doing stuff on Saturdays, when you walk in and you see the stuff that they've made, it's locally thought about, it's innovative, it's exciting, it's progressive. It brings joy to your life because you know what they're doing. It's conscious. It's not just a money mechanism, right? So we tend to focus on empowering impact-driven lifestyle founders and giving them the tools to be able to be entrepreneurial. So our next set of exercises, for those of you who have pen and paper ready to rumble, is we're going to look at 3 sections. We're going to look at what are your interests, what are your skills, and what are other people's needs. So how can you apply what the things that you're passionate about, whatever you focus on ultimately expands, and everything that you are passionate about in your life, there are markets for in some shape or form. So ultimately you are able to create and extract value from these markets if what you are doing is a value creating opportunity to that market. So your interests are valuable. The things that spark joy in you, that make you feel desire, ultimately are important to expand your focus on. The second thing is your skill set. Your skill set, the reason the background to this particular slide is water, is that your skill set needs to be constantly moving, right? There are ripples, things change, tides come, water is never constant. Unless of course it's in a constant state. But if you think of it in an ocean or lake, it is interchangeable with everything. So this idea of your skills constantly evolving and adapting to the environment that they're in order for you to be able to navigate potential uncertainties as things shift. And then finally, the other point is, where in the world can you where can you provide value for other people's needs? And they can be huge sort of macro needs. They can be things like, I want to solve climate change, or they can be micro needs for something along as simple as, I would like to provide joy through, hand knitted garments. And both of those spaces have enough value in them that you can create a sustainable form of revenue to support your lifestyle if you are strategic enough and you do your research. So if you create value, ultimately, you can capture value. And that's kind of the mindset that you need to begin to adopt. If you can create value, you can capture value. So it begins by knowing thyself, right? So this section over here is about, okay, if I'm looking from a positioning perspective, where do I want to position myself? So by knowing thyself, we begin to start looking at your interests. So I would love for you to write down a list of what excites you. So you can write this down on a piece of paper. I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to give you, let's do 2 minutes, if that works. Feel free to pipe up if you've got any questions as well. I'm very relaxed. You don't have to put things in the chat. Don't feel shy. So 2 minutes to write down a list of the things that excite you. So what are your interests? What magazines do you buy at the airport? What websites do you visit? What Instagram accounts do you potentially follow? What do you love doing as a kid? Maybe you loved skiing. Maybe you were a kid who, grew up near a forest. What are your icons? What are the favorite characters from history? Who inspires you? Did the revolutionary change that we see with Martin Luther King, did that inspire you? Was it potentially someone, was it your grandmother? Was it your father? Was it your brother? Who inspires you from history? What do you do on the weekend that you would potentially love to do on a daily basis? So is there something that you do? Maybe you're super passionate about yoga, or maybe actually you're someone who started trading Bitcoin and you're starting to think, I'd really like to do that a bit more than having to sit in my banking job. And then what do you want to do when you spend your free time? So besides consuming the internet and hanging out in awesome workshops like these, how do you spend your free time? Is it through exercise? Is it through cooking? Is it with friends? Do you love to travel when that was a more open option for us? And ultimately, who inspires you? So starting to think a little bit about, is it someone like a musician? Do they inspire you? Is it a politician? Is it an economist? Who inspires you? What are you obsessed with? So you find yourself continually coming back to this concept, this thing. You're someone who's always been creative, or you're someone who is really fascinated by health, or you are deeply passionate about X. You know what it is, and you know it's a bit of a roadblock for you. So what is it that you're a bit obsessed about? So yeah, write down this list of things that excite you. Cool. So I'm going to stop, and I'm going to see if anyone is willing to share any of their lists. Would anyone like to share anything that they find an interest? I'm gonna politely pick on Alexa. Is there anything that, not this Alexa, I
know that one. Yes, hi. Yeah. So for me is forest, environment, gardening,
Wonderful.
Actually craft as well.
Amazing.
And I do like traveling. And somebody who inspires me is David Attenborough.
Yeah, brilliant. As he should, in his tender 90s, still writing books, making films. I love it.
Yes, I actually met him in person, so I'm like super, like inspired by him.
Phenomenally jealous. I'd love to meet him. Tobias, I'm going to pick on you.
Hi, everyone. Well, I would like to share that I'm very inspired by Marcus Aurelius. I guess we all know Marcus, Roman emperor. And then on the weekends, I love to go to nature, be in the ocean when I can. In Belgium, this is not so easy, but I traveled for a long time, so I got that part behind me. And then, yeah, reading a lot, just spending time with family and friends, what life is about.
Yeah, brilliant. Philippe?
Hi. Yeah, I'm inspired by creative stuff. I always was creative since I was a kid. I like to draw a lot, and my work now is not related to that at all. I'm also really into history, so I'm always after like, of course, travel is part of that, but it's kind of changing the view of seeing the world and the world seeing me. So that's what I get out of it. So always drawing and stuff like this. I'm inspired by Diego Rivera. I'm sure you know, Mexican artist. And the way he kind of rejected the Western ideals that had been put upon art in Mexico and came up with something more unique and more local.
Yeah, brilliant. Very, very good. I'm busy reading a great book, The Invention of Nature, which is, it's about Humboldt. This is my adjunct. Yeah, fantastic book, The Invention of Nature. You should definitely read it. And it's about this German sort of, would he be, polymath. He knew everything about nature. He's kind of the David Attenborough of his time. But at the same point, he's the guy who went across down to sort of South America, sort of revolutionized it and helped Simon Bolivar, sort of liberate a lot of what was New Spain. Anyway, brilliant book, love it. You should definitely read it. So I can get distracted very easily, so I'm jumping back. And feel free, for those of you who don't have your cameras on, to talk if you'd like to talk at all. If not, that's okay. I'm going to jump back in if not, okay? So, let's go. Cool. So next, apologies, technical difficulties. Katie, would you mind stopping screen sharing, if possible? I don't know, it's frozen for some reason. You can.
Sorry, I just realized I was on mute. Yeah, I think, have you stopped? I think it's stopped now, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, it does this sometimes. Okay, I will open that back up again.
Gotta love Zoom, hey? 6 months at least into, well, yeah, it must be at least 6 months now into Zoom calls, and we're still like, is my screen working?
Yeah, apologies. And where else? Ready? Figures the market. Sure, what is perfect? Cool. All right, and we're back. Screen. Okay, now. Cool. So next,
Hey.
yay, we're back. Thanks. So next, I would love you to write down a little bit about your skills. So this obviously is a constantly evolving space, but we all tend to have some baseline skills, as I think of them, some type of deep technical vertical, which sounds intimidating, but don't let it be. So write down a list of what you can do. So what skills do you have? And skills can take many forms. So a lot of the time we think about, what is my professional knowledge potentially? What is something useful that you may have learned when you were younger that you kind of forget, So if we look at Philippe's version, where he speaks about, he loved drawing and art, but it's maybe not something he does on a regular basis, that's a skill, right? So what do people ask you for help with is a super important one. So what do people tend to come and actually ask you for help with? And you've actually slowly over time developed those potential 10,000 hours through helping people on certain topics. So what is something that you are naturally talented at as well? So talent is often very different to a skill. Skill can be learned, but talent might be, maybe you're brilliant at, maybe you just have a natural talent for singing, or you're a really good communicator. So that could be a different talent. And what sort of courses or skills would you study if you could now? So if I gave you $100,000 to go and study in the United States at any university of your choice, what would it be? Would it be in the United States? Doesn't have to be. What would you study now? Would you want to go and study Alan Watts and his theories on Zen Buddhism? What would you want to study? Would you want to go and study an MBA? Who knows? And then who needs your skills? So right now, who are the people who you tend to find in a perfect world come to you for support with the skills that you already have? And that might be through informal conversation. So again, if you are someone who's naturally quite creative, do people tend to lean on you for advice in relation to helping to curate certain things for them? If you're someone who's hyper technical, do people phone you to say, hey, I can't log into my Siri, or my Apple ID is no longer working, or my Wi-Fi is not working? Or is it something more technical than that? And then what is a secret skill that you're often too shy to share? So I think that a lot of us have skill sets that we either subconsciously don't necessarily share on a regular basis, or we're actually really good at something, but it's something we kind of have abandoned because, it's sort of been beaten out of us by working in the industries we tend to work in. So maybe you're, again, brilliant at singing, or you've always wanted to be an actor, or who knows what it is. Maybe you want to paint. So what's a secret skill that you're too shy to share? And then why do you have the skills you have? So, at some point, if we start looking at this from a psychological perspective, you've obviously been drawn like a moth to a flame, certain skills. Why have you been drawn towards these skills? Is it that you are intrinsically a people person? Is it that you are someone who is more a technical mind? Are you someone who wants to spend time in nature? Are you an athlete? Why do you have the skills that you have? So write some of these down. So your skills, I want you to do a little bit of a personal skills audit. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So then finally, other people's needs. So interestingly enough, I love, one of my favorite phrases is the term Ubuntu, which comes from South Africa originally. And it's, we are only people through other people. So we experience our humanity through other people. We are an interconnected society. The things that allowed mankind to be able to thrive ultimately is the fact that we are able to work in these interconnected human groups, right? So how commerce takes place is through an exchange of value. So beginning to think about what other people need versus what we need, then provide something where we can begin to think a little bit more entrepreneurially. Understanding what things are, allow you to imagine how things might be, right? So starting to think about, you know, what will people need in the future and why? Are they going to need more support in relation to certain industries that you might have exposure to? Who are the people who you like to work with? So there are people out there in the world that, you know, if you're sitting at a table, you'd love to be sitting working with them. There are people you don't like to work with. Who is your tribe? What table do you want to sit at in the world? Is it the table of inventors, or are you at the table of organizers? Are you at the table of pragmatists, scientists? Who do you want, you know, philosophers, economists? Which table do you want to sit at? And then why are you interested in helping and giving them solutions? So the people that you're looking at working with, these groups of people in the world, do you want to work with politicians? Do you work with politicians and you hate it and you actually want to work in tech? So why are you interested in helping this particular group of people and providing solutions to them? Is it, have you found your community where you find a flow state? And then next, I want you to think a little bit about how, how do they need you, and ultimately what can you offer them? And how many people potentially need this, right? So if you start thinking about some of the things that you can offer people in the world, is it advice? Is it counseling? Is it creative strategy? Is it, can you build a new software platform for them? I'm not sure your sort of skill sets or background. But yeah, starting to think a little bit more about this. And then ultimately, how do these people get their need met now? So when you start thinking about these people that you're looking at serving, how are they getting their need satisfied? Is it not satisfied? Do you have this itch right now? If you're an accountant and you know that there's a market out there of people who need their tax returns completed, how are they getting these sort of completed right now? Is that through coming to your company who's charging them too much money? Can you charge them the same amount, but act as an individual? So how are they getting these needs sort of met now? So understanding people beyond yourself is hyper important in the world of entrepreneurship. So then when we begin to position ourselves and differentiate ourselves, this is where we then go, okay, and this purpose changes, right? But ultimately, it's being able to bring together these three clusters of what are the things that you can't find yourself slightly obsessing over, or that constantly are grabbing your attention. Obviously, as long as you're not stuck in an echo chamber. But then the second thing is, what are your skills? So these again are constantly changing and updating, but ultimately you have a core set of competencies, right? You are a marketing person, you are a product person, you are brilliant at organization. What is your skill set that is deeply rooted in parts of your identity? And then start moving that into which groups of people do you want to use both your interests and skill set to serve. So what are some of the people that you're wanting to serve with this this combination or hybrid of things? And that ultimately gets you to a place where you're able to position yourself from through an entrepreneurial lens, right? So that's your entrepreneurial purpose in many ways. So knowing thyself is fantastic, but now you need to actually go out and do something about it. So, you know, I think a lot of us spend a lot of time thinking and not as much time doing. Socrates, who's a Greek philosopher, one of my favorite quotes of all time is, "To be is to do." And this idea of, you've got an idea, you've got a hypothesis, you've gone through the process of doing your market research, whatever it might be. Now, how can I test that in order to make it come alive. So there's two things in sort of treating yourself as a startup or having an entrepreneurial mindset, even within a profession, is you need to view everything you're doing as constant beta testing, right? So that ultimately is starting to, instead of viewing things as, you need to be running micro experiments. Is what you're doing right now working? The job you're in, is that working? It's an experiment. You have a commitment, you have financial liability potentially because you're paying for your mortgage, whatever it might be. But ultimately, it's a test. You're there, you've been there for a while. Is it still satisfying? Are you still growing? Are you getting what you'd like to get out of it? If not, what are you prepared to test? What's the potential risk profile? And then how do you test that assumption in order to get to the next point? So that's the first mindset, constantly thinking about everything you're doing in terms of testing. It also helps you to get very comfortable with failure. It allows you to realize failure is not failure. It's how you frame failure. So failure then becomes something of, what have I learned from this mistake, in inverted commas? It was a test. I prototyped something. How did that respond? The next thing is looking at the ever-evolving skill set. As we know, the workplace is moving faster than ever. Companies are moving faster than ever. Organizations are moving faster than ever. There are first principle things that are universal. Marcus Aurelius is famous for his Stoic approach to things. But ultimately, there are also things which are constantly shifting, right? So us as humans, as exhausting as that might sound, is there are constant skill sets which you can slowly be picking up. That lifelong learning is super important. So, understanding that there's certain stuff you're going to have to constantly upskill in order to get to a certain point allows you to almost build what I think of as a skill tree. So you need to think of yourself as being sort of planted in your values and who you are and what you do. So that's that strong foundation of this is who I am, this is what I want. But ultimately, as the tree begins to grow, it develops new branches based on the core values and the sort of internal, DNA of who it is that you are. So finally, it's sort of writing down an entrepreneur statement. So this is very similar to what they use in sort of design thinking and various other things that we teach. But this one is more about a personal entrepreneur value statement. So if you were a product or a brand, how would you position yourself out into the world? And a way which you do that is by filling out the blanks in this. So imagine this is a sentence and it goes, so it could be accounting skills, helps people who need their accounts to be filled out, who want to file their tax returns by enlisting accounting company, unlike accounting software. So that was a very boring example. No offense if you are in that field, but so starting to think a little bit about your strategic positioning, and what is your one-liner when you go to when you're at a bar or having coffee with someone, you meet them for the first time, you're standing outside that gym class, whatever it might be. What is the value you are creating in the world? So having your almost elevator pitch for who you are and what you do and how you create value then allows you to begin to think a little bit more strategically about how you position yourself as an entrepreneur. And again, it can be a micro entrepreneur, right? It can be a solopreneur. It can have an entrepreneurial mindset within companies. It can be an intrapreneur within an organization. But thinking a little bit about, this is how I define myself. That helps this group of people. Because ultimately every form of value creation is people-centric, right? Humans create money. Money serves humans. Helps a group of individuals. What do they want to do? What do they want to achieve? How do they want to do that? And what are you competing against? So understanding those positionings is super, super valuable. So it might be good for you to just sort of write down a value statement like this for yourself and to frame your context. So I'm just reminding you of those things in the beginning. Right now, if you are working in a company, ultimately are an entrepreneur. We are all entrepreneurs, exchanging our time for money and exchanging our knowledge for money, building products, trying to launch companies, whatever it is we're doing, we are exchanging something for value, right? Or we might be looking to exchange something for value. So understanding, what does your service offer? So that service might be you. What do you offer in terms of creating value for people that allows you to be able to capture it? Second is, who do you offer that to? So how big is that market that you're offering this to? And then how can you begin to think a little bit more about how you scale and automate some of the things that you do? So when you start to think about, okay, if I were to step back, would it be a case of trying to get other people to help me? Could I create a collective of people who are trying to build an advertising agency together? Could I create sort of an accounting firm, a law firm, whatever it is you might be? Could I be a group of freelancers? How can you begin to extract yourself from the workforce, which most people our age are doing? And then begin to start thinking to yourselves, okay, what is the brand that I need to build, and how do I build that, and for whom? And what is the service? How does that begin to create value, monetary value in my life? So if you want to know a little bit more about us, this is just, we are building a bonfire for people who are working on the same concept. So ultimately we have the Uprise Collective, which is a virtual community of people who are working on all sorts of exciting things. And basically it's a collection of people who are taking action on topics that are meaningful to them. So we have entrepreneurs, we have musicians, artists, filmmakers, all working in different select groups that are focused on sort of taking action on the things that they've kind of been resisting for a long time. So we've been around as a company for over 3 years. As I mentioned, we sort of started off as the Nomad MBA and then sort of evolved into Uprise Academy now. We've sort of had over 200 alumni come through our programs, loads of people who've gone on and founded companies, people who've won Cannes Film Festival awards. Loads of awesome people who are doing things differently, carving out their own paths in life, are not sitting in those classic fields, and some who have transitioned from working in one field to another, and we sort of have helped them upon that journey. So we sort of tended to run a program where we take them through this 3-month intensive program of travel and self-discovery, as well as teaching them entrepreneurial skills. So we would then take them through, this process, which I'm sort of showing you through. We're a bit of a lifestyle accelerator in a way. We help them go through the incubation process, get them to have a startup idea that's ready to be able to be launched, and then we'd introduce them ultimately to VCs if that was something that suited them. And I think it's frozen again. It has, for no reason.
Do you want me to
if you can hit the escape, that would
do
be
the deed again?
Oh, there we go. Okay. So this is one of our awesome alumni. My arrows are just doing funny things. One of our awesome alumni, Zena, who is, I would say, again, a polymath. She's just super intelligent, does loads of interesting stuff. She worked at NBC. She's just released a short film this year during COVID, which won a Cannes Short Film Festival award, which is pretty amazing. And yeah, for best short film. We had his son, who's just launched his Rach Majer platform, which is the premier sort of digital platform for surfing and water sports in the Middle East, not water spouts, as I typed. We got Jash, who's an astrophysicist, and she's just launched the UK's first analog space mission. So during COVID, she built a geodesic dome in her garden and has slowly been interviewing people from NASA and I forget the name of the European Space Agency, but it's the acronym of what the European Space Agency. And yeah, she's also been accepted to a space program now. So she's going into suborbital space, which is pretty phenomenal. And she's trying to figure out what to do next in terms of her product and still actively involved in our community. So yeah, you'll be meeting all of those people if you sort of come onto our collective. And these are some of the things we've done in the past on our programs and we'll do in the future, sort of in members events. And we'll be running sort of our non-MBA programs, which are more intensive on-site 3-month travel experiences. If you want to find out a little bit more about me or connect with me, yeah, my LinkedIn handle is Kyle Zeno, so Z-E-N-O, like the Stoic. And some of the upcoming sprints, which I'll be running on the community, the collective, which you'll find out a bit more about. One I'm going to be doing on sustainable entrepreneurship. So we all know the world is burning and collapsing. What do we do about it? How do we drive change? And how can we use sustainability as a vehicle for positive change? And secondly, I'm going to be doing another sprint on community-driven brand building. So ultimately, how can you build a community and then leverage that in order to create a brand? And there's going to be loads of other topics delivered by a bunch of people beyond just me. And the Uprise Collective is where you'll be able to find those sprints. So you join a collective of cool people, you apply to join a sprint, which is a particular topic. Think of it as a lecture series where you commit to taking action on a particular topic. So you might commit to taking action on sustainable entrepreneurship or building a brand. And then over that sprint period, we work together as a group, figuring out how to do what you're doing. And it's a group of people who are working on the similar types of topics. So yeah, it's a super, super cool thing that we're working on. I see a question.
That was just me. I've just I've just popped both mine and Kyle's LinkedIn profiles in the chat if you want to connect with us, have a chat, ask any questions, whatever. And I've also popped the link to the collective as well in there as well if you want more information or you want to request an invite or anything like that as well.
Awesome. And if you have any questions, was that helpful? If you want to know anything, yeah, feel free to ask away. I am here at your disposal.
Yeah, we've got a few minutes left, so time for a few questions if anyone does have any. Or if not, we'll let you get on with your evenings.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure. And hopefully we will chat to you very soon. Perfect. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining and participating this evening. It's nice to have a little cozy small group. I have also recorded the workshop as well, so you'll get it sent out in an email if you want to re-watch it, go over any of the slides or anything like that as well.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you very much,
guys.
Great. Bye.
See ya. Bye. Bye.